Morning Tilfie. Today we're gonna learn how to start Go workflows and then serve using Python workers for workflows and activities on Temporal.io. What will you learn in this video? So very straightforward. You can start temporal workflows in Go and then serve workflows in Python worker. So why Temporal.io? Is when you need a language agnostic task queue. So Temporal.io supports a lot of SDK from PHP, TypeScript, Java, Golang, Python, and so on. And you can easily define service logics in the code. So it will be kind of neater and everything is on one place. And most importantly, they have a durable execution, which means it's extremely reliable. So if you are confused about what Temporal.io do, I would recommend you to think it just like a task queue, but it is doing way more than that. So let's get into it. So in this video and the demo later, you will need Python, Golang, and Docker installed. So basically this is the code directory. You can look at it, and the GitHub repo is in the description. So we have the Docker compose file, and basically you have to spin up the temporal development over there, and then the directory. So the directory is the Go with Python, and then your Go temporal will be like the cron starter, which will be spawning the workflow. So in this case, it will be a cron that runs every minute. So you have to install and go run this package. Basically, yeah, and you will start running the workflows. So we'll go through that as well. And for the Python temporal, basically you have to run it like a worker, so it's always running. And you can see that it serves and prints out really pretty nice and fast. So you have the requirements. Basically, you just need a Temporal.io SDK, Python SDK. And then lastly is a temporal Docker file. So the cron starters.go will spawn the workflows, and the cron workers.py will serve them. So to start up the temporal server, as you can see, we have a Docker file. So you kind of just need to Docker compose up. And then for the Golang side, I think most importantly, when you interact with temporal or to serve the task, right, you have to pass in some parameters. So the recommendation is to wrap up in one object. So you can define it here. For example, my amazing payload, and then the name and age. So for the Golang workflows, to start it is pretty easy. So imagine you have an API server and you want to start some long running jobs and serve them using Python, right? So you have the workflow ID. Normally, this is a unique identifier. I would like this to be deterministic, but for this example, we will just use the UUID. We will be randomly generated. And the options you can see over here, I define my ID, the task queue that is going into, and then the cron schedule, so every minute. And next we have the payload. We create our payload as defined earlier on and pass in accordingly the parameters that we want, and all you need to do is kind of just to execute them. So over here we need to point out that this say hello workflow have to be exactly the same as what you define on the Python worker, and then you pass in your parameters. So starting the Python workers is actually pretty easy. You just need to connect and then basically define the task queue that is serving, define what kind of workflows is able to accept and activity is able to run. So you can see that I'm printing out starting the workflow, and then this will be like a async run. So you will kind of just wait for it, wait for new kind of tasks, right, or workflows or activities in this case, and then serve them. So the expected payload will be exactly the same as the Golang, right? So you have to define the name, the age, And what's so good about the SDK is that it will automatically convert for you into the data class, right? If you need a custom converter, you can read more on the sample site as well, right? So, and the name and age, so you can immediately use them, right? So the moment I retrieve them and run my workflow, I can immediately use name and age as my attributes. So on the Python side, we know that there is activities and workflow logic. We define the activity, right? And you can see this is pretty important. The definitions say hello activity, and then I basically write my activity definition here, my logic inside. And in this case, I'm just printing out using the activity logger, and then return a string that is say hello, my name, and then today is your age, right? So pretty straightforward. And then for the workflow wise, right, I think the most important part is like the say hello workflow must be the same as your Golang definition earlier on. And basically what you need to do is just like to run the activity over here. So this is basically how you execute the activity and how you organize, right? So in these greeting workflows, you can have many activities and organize it to your logic. So you want to do like if else condition, things like that. You can define it here. And basically Temporal, you have to run everything as like deterministic. So you cannot have like date time now and then every time your result will be different. So because the whole idea of Temporal is that make sure that your tasks get executed have the same output every single time, right? Because you have like capable of unlimited retries, things like that. So I print out the result, and next will be the demo time. So please follow along. I think knowledge is the best learned by doing. Okay, now we are in our VS Code. So basically how to get this code, you can copy and paste from my Git repo. So it's in the description, or you can clone the whole repo. So I will continue to add on other topics as well, and hopefully it works out well for you. So in this Docker Compose file, the Temporal will be spin up, and basically there will be two ports, the Temporal server port with 7233 and then the UI which is 8233. So let's get started. So the Docker file is pretty straightforward, nothing much. And then if you want to bump in the version, you can go ahead and bump up the version in the future. So last time they used to have a Temporal Lite, and now they put it as a development in the Temporal CLI. So this is extremely helpful for development. So let's spin up my Docker Compose. So Docker Compose up, and then you'll be running. So once it starts running, you can see on the UI as well on this page, which is the main page. So I will briefly go through the UI as well once we have started some workflows. So in this case, this will be the UI for Temporal at this point of time. So let's head back to our VS Code. So firstly, we need to spawn some cron jobs, I guess. Basically, Temporal is able to spawn like schedules, cron, ad hoc like tasks. So in this case, we're just going to have a cron, and then those are called like starting workflow. So it's your workflow starter. And in Temporal, what you need to do is that you define a kind of like the parameters that you want to pass in, right? You define as an object. So in this case, I want to pass in name and age, and I define this as a amazing payload. So this is my structure. So I'll be creating it and then passing it through. Initializing and connecting is like pretty straightforward as well. Just kind of del and then the host port. So you have more options under div, so you can take a look as well. Next, we have the workflow ID. So this is extremely way more important. So for workflow ID, normally I would prefer it to be like a business logic so that you can identify it and query or describe, right, using the SDK to find out what happened or like programmatically correlate. So normally I want it to be deterministic, and in this case I'm just for using UUID as a demo, and this ID have to be unique. Okay, it have to be unique. So next will be the workflow options. You pass in the task queue. So this basically the task queue have to be the same as your worker, and then the cron timing. So next we will create our payload, our amazing payload. So I called it ASO and then age 12. And to execute the workflows, basically you kind of just like the background, workflow options, and then the workflow name. So this is relatively important because the workflow name have to be the same as what you define on the Python worker, right? So if it's different, right, then you wouldn't know that you have to serve this workflow. So after this, you have to pass in the payload and maybe your parameters that you want to pass in. You wrap it in as one kind of like an object. That would be great. And then you start it. So let's quickly do it. So you can kind of go mod download or go mod tidy over here, but I've already done it, so let's just go run it. And then you can see that I have started my workflow calling this long UUID and then run ID. So on the UI, what will look like? You like this, right? You like a running, forever running workflows, and then you will create workflows based on your schedule timing. And a quick look overlook. Yep. So this is briefly how you navigate. There's schedules as well, and once you have multiple namespace, in this case we only have default, then you can segregate them by namespace as well. So that's some heads up. So next we have the workflow that's running and constantly running for like every minute. So we need to get our worker to start, right? So over here, you can look through the code. I think most importantly is that we define the workflow and also the activity, and then the payload that we are expecting. So you can see this is exactly the same as the Golang one. And then what does the Temporal Python SDK do for you? It will convert for you. So it will kind of pass it in and then convert for you into data class, so you can use it immediately. So when you define the activity, firstly you define the activity that you want to run, and then the workflow, and you can see that I'm using the name directly, right? I didn't do any like create initialization. I didn't initialize this at all. Yeah. Next we have the hello workflow. So this is the greetings. And you can see that this is exactly the same as what we have in the Python, as well as the Go, say hello workflow. So this has to be the same. This is also important. You have to kind of type it. If not, you wouldn't know what is the hint, right? You wouldn't be able to cast it properly, same as here. And then you kind of just connect and run, and you will serve the workflow and then the activities. So the mental model over here is that you define a workflow, right? You run a workflow can run many activities, and then this is one of them. Over here we only have one activity. So let's get into it. So Python cron. So I have already installed the dependencies beforehand. You can just install it, basically just install the temporalio package, and that will do. And then you can see that I'm actually running, and you have already succeeded with some tasks. So over here I have already said like return hello, today is your age, and after that I use my workflow logger to print it out. And you can see that hello, today you're 12-year-old. Obviously I'm not. Otherwise I'll be like extremely talented to get this video. Next, what will we do? We can see it over here. So you can see that this cron is still running, but you already spawned, and then one of the workflow it have already been completed, right? So this thing is always running, and then there will always be one that's running, and then the other one that is like start and end. So you can see that this is what will happen, and you can kind of like explore it around, what to do with it, how is it like. Oh, we got another one that's done. So pretty much that's about it for like starting Go workflows, using Go to start workflows, and serve using Python workers. I find this extremely helpful, especially when there's no common task queue out there, any Redis queue that is like language agnostic. In this case, Temporal is not just language agnostic because of like the large coverage of SDK, language SDK, and is also extremely reliable and durable. And the communities have been like kind of welcoming as well, so you can check them out. Right, so till next, I hope that you like these videos. Remember to subscribe and kind of like the video, so that will be extremely encouraging for me. Yeah, thank you and see you next time.